Hey everyone. I'm going to have some fun today with the Ag Uncensored podcast and just talk about my recent trip to the Commodity Classic in Denver this last week and kind of go through what I maybe experienced or, heard about. There's also fun rumors too. I don't know if I'll get too much into that, but plenty going on. Naturally, a large congruent of farmers and ag business people coming together. So next week I'll actually be in San Francisco for the World AgriTech, which will be definitely more business, corporate, investor feely. This one we get a little more farmer perspective, kind of the how the crowd was taking it, how the exhibitors were taking it, kind of the feelings around everything. So I'll just kind of jump into that. So didn't meet everybody. I wish I could have. I definitely missed some people. But naturally, the week two was a. It started off really kind of positive, and then some. There's always some tweets that come in. It's like go, and tariffs and all that fun stuff, and then people kind of. Let's say that the tone went down a little bit the last day of the show versus kind of Sunday when things first started off. But overall, it almost seemed kind of like a last hurrah for a lot of groups, um, because there's so much uncertainty, and what I mean like last hurrah is like everyone was putting their full effort in to really try to impress these big tier farmers on getting into all the stuff that there is there. And I talked to a few people, and they kind of felt that too. It's like, okay, this is okay. The energy's still going, but there was like this something else kind of feeling there. It's like, oh, things could get really bad here soon too. There was plenty of groups that are trying to talk about that too, from yeah, tariffs, trade, USDA, where things are going there. Everyone's kind of just still waiting. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of suggestion. There's little things kind of going on too that are maybe disrupting things a little bit. Maybe there's good and bad to it. Uh, that's a whole nother conversation. But it was around in the room for the most part, though. People were just trying to showcase their products, sell their stuff, and farmers seem pretty engaged at the show. They just, sometimes you can tell at a conference are they actually hanging around trade booths talking to the people, or they're just kind of passing by and they're just there to have fun or whatever. I haven't been there in a few years, so I can't exactly explain it from then in comparison. But like I said, everyone was kind of positive. It was kind of like a last kind of big moment. It's like, okay, yeah, things are still, they're not terrible. They're just, we don't know what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's agriculture for you. It's ups and downs. It's in betweens. There's rough patches. There's good times. There's bad times. There's all sorts of things in between, and everyone's going to handle a little differently. Now, as for probably some other big elephants in the room, uh, I think there was a lot of, just from talking with other people, where sustainability is and things like that. And yeah, it seems like it's waning. And then like the energy side is kind of moving up, and might replace into energy kind of with the biofuels and ethanol stuff and all, 45Z, all that fun stuff. Those are big ticket items. There's a fear that if it doesn't get figured out here, that airlines, for instance, might go source their clean fuel from Brazil and other places instead of here. So there's a lot of inner workings on the background figuring that out. Another interesting topic was there is more talk around the people getting more efficient. It's that's the whole thing, but like maybe more agronomically, the talk is to be a little more efficient, which is nice because that's kind of what things like I've been working on, things in the ag tech community, precision ag, I've been working on for a long damn time. seems there's some, the doors are opening a little bit more there. Like I've talked and others have talked. Let's get back to the basics of kind of precision ag. Like just do something. Like even though I'm not the biggest fan of grid testing, okay, if you're not doing any testing, it's better than nothing. It's like it's good. Okay, let's do something. Let's get back to some of those basics and get to the idea of, hey, maybe we just shouldn't blanket fertilizer everywhere and we shouldn't do those types of things because inherently we all know that there's plenty of inefficient processes on the farm. And yeah, sometimes uncertainty and prices being kind of up and down, and a lot of that can kind of force people to say, all right, I got to spend my money a little differently. I can't just do what I've been doing when the markets were good and things like that. So maybe there's some shifting there, which is good for the whole ag tech space and precision ag. But there's there's something else kind of I was feeling there. There's plenty of good things happening. People, making this and that and new services and new opportunities. That's always happening. Uh, I'd say a little more is going on than maybe the last year or two, just because of, sometimes when markets are good, that no one just wants those things. So you kind of need that kind of middle ground. Um, but I started to just kind of feel it, and when talking with people, just seeing what's there. There's a lot of cool new stuff that OEMs are putting out and all that, but a lot of that stuff's just not reachable by most farmers. Okay, the cool new thing from John Deere or Case or Agco or whatever, that's all great. I like to see it. Those things. I know some of them have been developing for, let's see here, 8 years, and they're finally coming to fruition just from old conversation. Some of these things take a long time to develop. It's good to see those things happening, but there's a relative small market that can handle it. There just is. And there's this feeling too. It's like, okay, I could, like for a planter, I could put all this stuff on it and make it the top line, buy the newest, latest, greatest stuff, even put all the new aftermarket stuff on. Or, I could just kind of use what I got and it'll probably do fairly well. Maybe not quite as well, but good enough where I know if I do the other thing, I could easily more regret it. There's more risk there. So that's the other part of this all, is the risk reward of some of these digital tools and what they cost. Of course, hardware always costs money. The digital tools sometimes don't, which I've talked about many times is it's on its own downfall with farmers and their value prop from that. Because while I get you want all these larger groups want more engagement, charging nothing for it can kind of diminish the value. Then again, maybe farmers are starting to realize that, like, oh yeah, if I'm paying for something for nothing, there's something else that I'm giving up. I think that's starting to awaken a little bit. So the thought process of I'm okay with paying for some of this, but it needs to mean things a little differently. I need a little more, maybe a little more trust. That's just in essence a feeling, little talks here and there. So nothing like, holy crap, definitive. I have graphs and charts. I don't do that stuff. I'm more of an observational, emotional person when it comes to all this crap. But I do have a sense of this, with the people that are using the top adopters, the, what do you want to call it, 5-10%, maybe even top 20% that really are more engaged in this. Most of the farms there were probably in that mark, really. I would say not all, but to a sense, some of the tech is maybe, I feel, plateaued to a point. It's not that there's not more development and newer things, but the excitement, the want and need for the newer thing, the newer tool, the newer software, the newer analytical thing. We're like almost we've done about, we've kind of maxed out those top tier adopters. They're like, okay, I just really need to hone in on what is there. and there's not much more extra little things that really like entice them. And they're just kind of like, yeah, I just have to get used to these cool things, whether they're paying for them or they're given to you, whatever, and really just use what is there. But then you still have the other problem, which is, the other 80%. They're they're kind of still hiding away a little bit. There's maybe certain areas of naturally of ag tech, which is, large and vast on what they're using. That I mean, there's a lot of biological companies there, to say the least. Some I've never heard of. Some I've seen. It looks like they've gotten bigger, have more of a presence. Uh, how many of those will be around next year? No idea. I'm sure there'll be plenty of consolidation in that part. But there was a lot of people around it, so I think that side of ag tech is, there's a lot of hope there, because it's like, oh, if I can buy this for $20 and it replaces $40 worth of what I've done before, okay. There is a growing thought of, some of the maybe petrol based, chemicals that are a little more harsh. People are feeling like, oh, if I do buy a biological, I'm doing a little better for the environment, for my land, for myself. There, you can feel that, you can see it with how people are talking. You just overhear it, so that's kind of interesting. So that hasn't plateaued, although it might have in any more companies joining, like really joining and having a chance. That's maybe, I could see that being a plateau right there for the biologicals. There's almost so much more room to get even investors, and they're like, let's get these things done, make them work. And there's a big consensus that we need them to work. And some are not, and finding out who those people are. Lots of great smart minds are trying to figure that out, make it easier to figure out how these things work, where they fit, where they don't. It seemed like that space on the biological side, they have their next step of evolution needs to really get into where their stuff really works, because it doesn't work everywhere. It might work in just different crops, different fields, different soil types, different characteristics, different all sorts of things, different temperatures and whatnot. Instead of just being, oh, it's blanket, it does this, maybe there's some that can do that. I'm sure there's, like some of the replacement herbicide ones or replacement fungicide ones, I suppose maybe those are more fitting. The nitrogen ones, though, to help there, they got to do a better job of figuring out where their product works and where it doesn't. Maybe it works in every single field, but maybe one field it works, in 50% of it in certain zones. Another field it only works in 10% of it, with this special area. That is really hard to do. But then again, from the different kind of, I'll call it agronomic, more service providers that were there, they're testing this stuff more. They're getting into it more. The groups that are testing those types of things, and that does take digital data. That is the digital software side, and they're starting to say, okay, where does this work? Where doesn't it? How? What are the mechanisms? Because they see it not going away. They like the storyline, but they're still a little apprehensive, and farmers are asking for more proof that this works the way it is talked about and marketed. So there's that. So maybe the plateau of some new things coming out, I think is we're kind of there, because there's also going to be a dropping of probably how much money goes into a lot of new crazy things in the ag tech space overall, just because of the markets and uneasiness of where things are going, globally, really. So people just need to hone in what's there. Like I was saying, kind of get to the basics, find out where the stuff works, where it doesn't, how it works for them. As for, and that's for the people that are maybe the other 80% that, aren't using maybe more of the digital things. Maybe that is a way for them to get more involved through some of these new processes, biologicals and whatnot, saying, okay, well, I like it. It does fit, because they're all buying chemicals and inputs and seeds and everything else. They're a little more interested because, okay, that makes sense in that realm, buying a product, putting it on like they have. But if that forces them to kind of use some of the digital tools, maybe that's a way to actually that adoption can kind of go up. I can see that happening, though I think the biological groups need to be a lot better at it. I think personally, and I know there's others that feel this way too, if they want to differentiate themselves from the others, because there's like a 2,000 of them, you need to give farmers and agronomists and the people distributing ag retailers the tools to understand where your product should go. And that does take digital data. That takes that understanding and being transparent around that. Because I think people realize that. They're smart enough to realize that from all sides, all different shapes and sizes of farms. And I think that type of thing can be a real positive thing to say, oh, at least they're trying to show us where their stuff can and can't work, or why it does and doesn't work. Not just here's a story, a marketing sales pitch. I think everyone's getting tired of that, just on everything ag tech, the same old sales pitch. They want to see results, so show them results and work with the groups that have the digital tools, or heck, build your own. There are ways to do that. Some of you definitely have the money to do that, or to hone in that a little more. Um, that's what the ag tech industry needs. It's also help from itself. If you put yourself in that category, then help that category and work together. Doesn't have to be too hard. It's a pretty easy concept to figure out. As for just basic stuff, yeah, there's still going to be that fear with farmers, especially going forward with what the USDA is going to turn into. How is that going to affect the digital side of data and all the stuff in between? The push of maybe more healthier ways to grow food and traceability and nutrition. There's a lot of talk about it, but is the make America healthy again, or food and make food healthier, do we really have the tools to do it? I mean, the answer is, I mean, yes, but at scale and really the way it needs to be done, no. Hopefully some incentive comes in to help groups do that. The digital side of it, the transparency, the tracking. While there are some softwares and tools and things that exist that do that in certain spaces, some companies have to build their own. Different CPGs might have their own kind of variants of that depending on what they're doing. Fruit and vegetable probably has, they have some of that already. Commodity side doesn't. It's there kind of, but not to the level just because of its nature. Though there is a need, there is a want, like I've talked about before. Maybe that's where small farms can kind of come in, differentiate themselves so they don't get just sucked in by the unknowns of commodities, of like the major commodities, get into maybe the smaller, more specialized commodities. Work with the smaller CPGs. We're lucky here in North Dakota. We have like 30 different staple crops. We have processing plants for all of those different things to different extents. Now, at the same time, a lot of our stuff goes to Canada. So, like most of it, uh, it's shifting. The thought is shifting. So I don't know what that's going to all mean, but um, those groups need help too. And I think they're opening up and seeing their markets like, okay, that maybe I need to showcase where the sunflower seeds come from, where the beans, the pinto beans in that bean dip, where they come from, what was sprayed on them, all that type of stuff. Just, it's not an extra special product. It's just kind of a natural part of what the food groups need and what the farmers should be able to provide. They need that link. And I think once that link is set, then you can start kind of getting into maybe more of that, how the nutritional stuff is worked between. You need at least the link. There's not enough of a link right now between those things in most cases. And if there is, they probably need to be, enhanced. They need some extra push. So that's a whole nother conversation of it though, too. Um, is that where we see the commodity side, or a lot of it, mainly corn and soybeans, and, canola's getting into the phase two, and even sorghum, I suppose, is some of that a lot going more to the energy side, the energy thought process, energy to animals, energy for fuel. And then there'll be a separate, like, no, then here's the food stuff. And we kind of separate the value chain instead of it being kind of all under maybe one essence. It's kind of people are starting to kind of talk that way a little more, as there's some things separating agriculture in that realm, and it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just the major commodities, the larger farms, they're a different breed, and then the more specialty size things, they're turning into a different realm too. Something's brewing there. And so, like I said, maybe there's a plateau of what we all thought is here: digital ag tech, precision ag. And now we just got to really work these pieces together, because we've all just kind of been like, hey, they're all here. And now we can fit. The niches can fit better. The different areas can fit better, and figure out how they work together to bring that more value, to bring more logical, systematic strategy in how everyone fits. It's like we've been kind of just running blind, trying to make the next big thing. And that was good for someone. It needed to happen. It's just, it's been messy. I've talked about that plenty, and I'm not going to highlight anyone specific. But there's a need to just get into some dirty work of working together. Like, I mean, some of the things I've been working on are these kind of some large, global type field boundaries and IDs and standardization and core foundational things. I've got my mind a lot more into like kind of the open source world. Like, how does that fit, or what do we need in it to help in all of this, to just get the wheel spinning, get more farmers engaged. That's what I'm trying to do. Others are trying to do their own versions of what that is to them. That feels good. That does. It seems like there's more of a collaborative mindset. It's just there's a lot of confusion on what to do, and then who's paying for it? Who's paying for what? That's the bigger question. We can have all these great ideas. I'm packed full of them, and 1,000 people other are. But where's the money? Where's the support? Is that going to come from different governments through, if the talk is more privatization into different things within the USDA and beyond, all right, what does that mean? How easy is it going to be for people to participate? Is it only going to work for the big guns, or do the little guys get a chance? Like I said earlier, these are all just big questions that are kind of like, don't hold your breath. There's all these other things clouding it throughout the world. And it's worrisome, because we can have all these great ideas, work together, strategize, find out the right value. But if there is no foundational help with some of these things, through various forms, it can't just be from investors and VCs and corporates. There needs to be other elements. So, and that, that's something that I think was showcased interesting to me. And I'm glad I kind of talked about it on LinkedIn. Groups like, yes, all the different agencies in the USDA, and then NASA was there. That was kind of like a highlight, seeing them, because the other times I've been at Commodity Classic or other ag shows, I've never seen them there. It's good to see them there. It's good to see a bigger USDA presence. Be like, hey, we are important. We have some things we got to work on. Sure, we need efficiencies here and there. And I think like there was a lot of activity around there naturally for different reasons. But the NASA booth, it's like without them, a lot of these foundational things that we're all using right now wouldn't exist. Or they wouldn't exist to the point they were. That's for dang sure. GPS, great example. We still need that involvement. We can't just say, "Oh, I didn't get a direct thing from it after they said a program happened, so that's just wasteful. Let's throw it away." Or, "Oh, that person got that and I didn't, and that money, I don't know where it happened to it. oh, they suck. They're fraud, waste, and abuse. That's like the mindset we're in, and it's really dangerous. Like, I'm not trying to pick on a side. Like, there's always times that, yeah, yes, there's probably some overspending, some money that needs to be a little more transparent. I mean, I've worked in crop insurance. It's not perfect. There's there's some things that, yeah, need to be done there. At the same time, foundationally, they need to still operate. They still need to work. Some of these programs are long term. They have a more strategic value to it that is maybe hard to see, that maybe takes a decade or two to really kind of form into stuff. I've gotten used to that on the space side with satellites going up. Landsat, which is a satellite that's been up and done all sorts of great things. You wouldn't get the WADS reports without it. NASA's been key to that, and the USDA. You need satellite imagery to do that. That's kind of how it works. It could be a little better, probably, but it's had to work. Well, those things take billions of dollars and time, and they've had cost overruns and issues and bureaucracy to create stuff. Yeah, all that stuff and above. But without it, there'd be giant problems. And while maybe they have cost overruns, I know there's been some analysis just on Landsat alone. The value of what it's cost to run and what it's brought back to industry in the world is enormous. It's like I $1 to $50 of value, something like that. And a lot of that underlying tech is that these different programs. We can't forget that. Sure, we need a little more efficiencies, but we need the other stuff too to get the bigger things to happen. And I'm glad like a group like NASA was there to kind of showcase that. And I talked to them, say, I think there's more that could be done here. Show the storyline, not just here's the new great things and this and this. Like, that's important too. But let's talk about why it all exists, the history. Like, the first satellites that went into space they were built and designed to look at crops in other countries for defense purposes, and also for our own, kind of knowing what's going on. That's for every country. Some of their first satellites. That's what's insanely important. If you can't monitor kind of the general essence of what's happening with growing food, well, you're gonna have some big problems. We need to understand that those tools exist to do that. So I was happy to see there was really good engagement there, and it seemed, talking to them, they were really excited, talking to farmers, saying this is what we do, this is how this works, this is how it helps you. However that is through, and growing up into it, and being enamored by NASA and everything there, as well as my dad, it's been, it's closer to the heart. It feels a lot. It feels nice to see that. It's like validation that some of the stuff we were doing was important. Maybe, it's worked in varying ways, but it's like, okay, that is important. That is a big deal. That's the other side of, I think, what a show like at Commodity Classic can showcase is, you know, educating on why these things are important. And I got that feeling. It felt well, it felt good. But yeah, there's a lot of things brewing, and it's a little wary, daunting. Like I said, the general ag tech side of how I think of it, more maybe software, digital tools, things like that. We need some rework. It's great for these top guys, the big farms, top commodities. It's not great for the other guys, and some of those are big guys too. But they need it. It needs to be set up differently. It needs to be showcased, educated them differently. That takes a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It takes time, money, effort. Something needs to shift there. There is a need to something. I have a slew of ideas. Other people do too. How that'll come to be, I don't know. We're all working on something, I suppose. I think I'll find out more next week, even like kind of what people are trying to bring into the fold to kind of help on that. It'll be interesting, but that side just needs to get figured out. It's everyone talks about adoption curves. I've talked about it. It's been just yeah. Like I said, it's at a plateau. It's of some sort. Some are little things like right now because markets are tough or weird. and there's uncertainty. Groups doing, you know, financial tracking and marketing tracking and things like that, the fintech maybe side of it, or if you want to call it that, um, they're getting some extra love because like, oh yeah, we got to really get our stuff together. Um, it seems some of the kind of the variable rate thought process that's it's coming back. It there was a big want into it was always kind of going up. It would always was kind of going up. Then all the big money came in. It was like, oh, it needs to be done this way, but it it kind of went up. A lot of people tried, and then it wasn't kind of built. The systems of how people are trying to approach it didn't really fit, because it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more local. Some of the tools just didn't quite do what they said. We've all lived that. I think now we've, that trough of disillusion, if you want to call it, some people call it. I think we're getting out of that. So that's a good hopeful thing. But that's still a struggle though for that, that other 80% or the people that are maybe just, they've adopted GPS and stuff like that. If you want to count that, sure. Auto steer and general, maybe boom control, nozzle control, row control. That's, I don't almost like that's just part of machines now. I don't even really count it like ag tech or precision ag. That's just part of it. Yeah. And if people don't want it, they don't want it. It's just, that's part of the system. It's all the extra things that are not just normal and normalized. Variable rate application is getting more normalized, but it needs some help. Some of the more intense tools around that process, different other extra analytics, from, like I said, hopefully that's a burgeoning thing that the biological space can kind of, it all just kind of comes together and reaches it out. But like I said, something needs to kind of boost the other side to get them going. Hey, maybe if the 45Z comes out and people need to troll that and track that'll do it. I don't know. Maybe that's what'll do it. Maybe there's some changes, that I've talked about or heard about within the USDA on how things are reported that, that'll change things and get people more engaged. Something bigger needs to happen there. Those are some things that might. There's probably other things that could come around to do that. Maybe some different incentive programs, different structures. I don't know. All in all, it was fun. Talked on another podcast, on the Farm for Profit podcast, about stuff and satellites and all that. So that was fun and had a lot of good conversations. It was a good show. I can't deny that. I will hopefully go again next year. I would like to. And there's a lot of optimism still, but there's a lot of worry on all sides of it. We need to shift in how we kind of all work together. And maybe that's where, the food and nutritional stuff, maybe that's actually how some of it kind of gets boosted up too. Maybe it's all these things, the energy side, changes within the USDA, things that are maybe going on in the FDA, other kind of burgeoning technologies like biologicals and things like that. Maybe all these things are just kind of coming in, and that's going to finally get kind of the laggards in all of this finally in the game to some extent. Just more of it. Maybe that is it. I'll say that. That's what I'm going to be optimistic about. Is all these things are kind of converging, but they need to converge also together. And there's some very core foundational processes to do that. And we have to be we have to be aware of that. We can't just do it. There's a lot of underlying things that need to happen and work for that, all that stuff to come together to really work so that it does just become part of agriculture. And it's not ag tech, it's just tech within ag. So that's what I got for now. I'll do a little write up on it too, or something. Otherwise, I'll be at World AgriTech next week. If you see me around, let's meet up, have a drink, BS a little bit, whatever. Talk about the future, complain about the past. I'm all for it. But that's it for today. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.